Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making a pasta drying rack. Now, for those of you who are regulars here on the show, you're probably having a little bit of deja vu at this point in time because we have done a pasta drying rack before. In fact, we did it on an episode of Woodworking with Ellie. Now, guys, that pasta drying rack, as good as it was and as fun as it was, did have some stability issues, and we ended up having to repair those by extending the legs at the bottom or by weighing it down because it did have a tendency to tip. So what we're going to do on today's show is we're going to make a version that has much more stability, still is able to be broken down for easy storage, and it's all made out of basic equipment or basic materials that most of you will probably already have in your shop. So let's head over to the bench and I'll show you what I have in mind. Well, we're going to start off with the most complicated piece of the entire project, and that will be the top disc that ends up holding all the pasta. So what I have here is a scrap of poplar. It's 1 1/8 thick. You don't have to make it that thick. This is just what I had in the rack. And what we're going to do is I've laid out some center lines here, and I'm going to draw a 3 1/4 inch diameter circle. Now I want to take this over to the scroll saw and cut it out. So let's do that. I'm going to place a number 7 reverse tooth blade in there. It's a brand new blade, and we will cut this out just outside of the lines. And once we get that done, we can then take it over to the belt sander and clean it up and do the final sanding to get its final size and shape. Well, with the shaping done, I have drilled an appropriately sized hole right here in the middle to accept a 1/4 threaded insert. And for this particular insert, that hole is 23/64 in diameter. You're going to have to check your inserts to see what the proper size hole is, but for mine, 23/64. So we're just going to screw this insert right into the middle here until it's flush. There we go, just like that. And that is almost this piece done. We do have some more drilling to do in this, and that's what we're going to get to next. Well, what we need to do is we need 9 holes, 1 inch deep, 3/8 of an inch in diameter, drilled around the circumference of this circle. And we want them evenly spaced and drilled in the center of our 1 1/8 inch thickness. So in order to figure out the spacing here, a full circle is 360 degrees. We have 9 holes that we need. You divide 360 by 9, and that gives you 40 degrees. So drilling jig, the world's simplest drilling jig. I have a crosshair here with a hole drilled, a 1/4 inch diameter hole that coincides with the center of our circle so that this can sit here. And on the back, I have just put a temporary jig knob stuck through the back to be able to go into our threaded insert. And I have placed one line here, a center line along the thickness, and a center mark in the middle here so I can set up the fence of my drill press. So what I've also done is taken our 40-degree line and I have placed it right here on our jig. So all we're going to do, we're going to thread our circle onto our jig just like this. We're going to line up that line that we placed on here with our top line, and we're going to mark over here on the edge of the circle at 40 degrees. Then we're going to rotate that until that mark aligns with our vertical line, and then we're going to place a mark here at 40 degrees, and then we're going to rotate it till it lines up, etc., etc., until we get all of our marks all the way around on our circle. Once we get that done, we can just take a square, line it up across our block or our circle like this, and we're going to place a mark there to give us something to align to. And then guys, all we need to do at that point is take this over to the drill press. We're going to set our depth stop to drill a 1-inch deep hole. We're going to clamp our little drilling jig onto our fence so that the fence allows the bit to strike in the center. And then using the lines that we just drew on our circle, we can drill all of our 3/8 diameter holes. And what you end up with is something that looks like this. Kind of like an old Tinker toy, remember those? All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm just going to take this over to the router table. I'm going to put a 1/8 round over on each side of this hub, give it a good sanding, and then this piece, the hardest piece of the entire pasta drying rack, is done. And what you end up with is something that looks just like this. So at this point, we need some dowels to finish off this hub. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the table saw. We're going to set our stop block on our miter fence to 9 inches, and we're going to cut 9 3/8 diameter dowels to 9 inches long. And once you get those pieces cut, you can just give them a good sanding. Now you're going to need one more piece of dowel, and that will be a 15.5-inch long piece of 1.5-inch diameter dowel. Now guys, you don't need an 1.5-inch diameter. 1 inch will do just fine, but this is what I had in the rack. It was a spare piece that had been sitting around for years, so this is what I used. So either way, a 15.5-inch long piece of dowel, and you can just cut that at the table saw. Well, what I have here now is a couple pieces of poplar, again, 1 1/8 inch thick. They are 2 inches wide and 10 inches long. These two pieces will form the base. So what I've done is right here in the center on the one piece, I have drilled a 5/16 hole, and then dead center of that 5/16 hole, I have counterbored a 3/4 inch recess with a Forstner bit, and that is going to house a 1/4-20 threaded insert. Now, why do we want that 3/4 counterbore? Well, that is because when we hammer this in, it will allow the entire threaded insert to sit flush to our stock. In our second piece, I have drilled a 5/16 diameter through hole. Now, guys, I have also cut over at the table saw some half lap joinery here to get these to fit together, almost like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree kind of thing. Now I know that a lot of you don't have access to dado blades, so I've just used my regular blade and made multiple passes, but because of that, it leaves a rough edge on the inside, and I need to clean that up with a chisel. And what you end up with is something that looks like this, and this, with your insert, is the bottom of our base, and this is what our pasta rack is going to rest on. So guys, this can all be sanded and cleaned up as best you can, and once you get that done, there's only one more thing that we need to do, and that is we need to work on this piece of 1.5 inch diameter dowel. Now, I have marked the center on each end, and what we're going to do is we're going to drill a stopped 3/16 diameter hole in each end. And that 3/16 diameter hole is going to house some hanger bolts. Now, if you don't know what a hanger bolt is, it looks just like this. In fact, it looks exactly like this, and it has a certain thread count on one side for a nut or a threaded insert. In this case, it's a 1/4-20 thread, and on the other side, it has an aggressive wood thread. So what we're going to do is we're going to thread these into our 3/16 diameter holes in the end so that our 1/4-20 threads are sticking out on either end of our 1.5 inch diameter dowel. And once we get that done, well, you know what? I'll show you how to put this thing together. Now guys, when screwing in a hanger bolt, let me show you the best way I've found to do it. You guys might have your own method, but this is mine. what I do is I take two nuts, hex nuts that are the same thread count as the threaded end, and I put them onto the threads. From there, I take two wrenches and I treat one as a jam nut, and I hold it in place and I basically lock them together like that. Now they can't spin on those threads, and all you need to do is hold this in place now and just carefully thread this in. And those nuts that are jammed on there will allow you to thread it in very easily, but you won't damage those 1/4 20 threads because they're protected by the nuts. And then when you get it threaded in as far as you want it, you just basically unlock them by twisting them in opposite directions. And there you go. Threaded in perfectly and no damage at all to the 1/4 20 threads. Now, something I will point out to you is you may need two different lengths here. In fact, I'm going to say you will need two different lengths because this has to go all the way through to the threaded insert on the back, whereas this one just has to go into the top hub. So let me get this sanded and then I'm going to show you the assembly of this unit. Okay, so the assembly of this is actually fairly simple. You have the threaded insert on the bottom with that half lap joint facing up. Your second piece slides over top, fits securely in here, and then your 1.5" dowel threads in with that hanger bolt. And because the threaded insert is on the bottom here, that pulls it all together and holds it in place. Once you get that done, your Tinker Toy top goes on the other threaded insert, threads in place just like this, nice and secure. And then you have your 9 dowels, 3/8 of an inch in diameter, and they just friction fit into all of your Tinker Toy holes here. There you go. Rock solid pasta drying rack. Very different from the other one we made here on the show, but very, very functional. And there you have it, a pasta drying rack. Guys, like I said, this is not a new project for the show. We did make another one, but it did have its issues. It was a much more simple design, and while it did work, it was not as stable as what this one is. However, this one also has a lot more methods involved with it that may not be toddler or young person friendly, whereas the other one was brought in as a child's woodworking project. So, two different variations of the same end product, even though the products are very differently designed. Guys, you can make this from anything. I have given you rough dimensions of what I use today, but these were not planned dimensions. These were dimensions of whatever I had in the rack. I had that 1.1 thick poplar. What did we use that on just recently? But I can't recall. But either way, that's what that's from. It's scrap pieces of that. So that's what I ended up using for this project. It just worked out in my favor. The dowels, I always have dowels stocked in the shop. Threaded inserts, I always have those. So most of this here was scrap. Even that 1.5" dowel for the main post. I did not initially plan on having a dowel in the middle. I was going to have a square cut piece of stock and then just route the corner edges of it. But then I saw this up in the rack, and this is actually a leftover piece from the threaded post of my workbench stool that we made here on the show. So it is very much a leftover of everything. The stool, I turned that one out of maple, but this was my test piece from years ago, testing out my threader to see how it works. So it's all scrap. It's all stuff that I already had. So this project, in essence, really cost me next to nothing. I already had everything in stock here in the shop. So no initial output of cash to make this project. As well, it breaks down so easily and so quickly that it's easier to store. The other one takes up quite a bit of space in the cupboard, whereas this one here, put a little Velcro strap around it, or hook and loop, whatever you want to call it, and it will hold it all together to store in a very small footprint in your cupboard. So guys, if you are interested in making your own pasta, we actually have a pasta making video here on the show. You should check that one out if you're interested. But if you're interested in making your own pasta and are in need of a good, solid pasta drying rack, this is the project for you. And guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the program. If you haven't already, if you found any part of today's show fun, interesting, informative, what have you, why not like and subscribe to the channel? We have an absolutely amazing audience base here, and I'm hoping that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this project. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you found this an alternative method from the other pasta drying rack that we made. But more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.